speed running today. Well, as speed running as you can do while narrating. Hope everyone is doing well. I have until 2:15 at the late, 2:30 at the latest, to finish up today's recordings, because I've got another house viewing, so yippee on that count. One of the houses we'd bookmarked to go look at has been delisted, so boo for that. But before we speedrun the whole narration thing, we shall head over and do some clickety-clacks. Because without the clickety-clacks, YouTube is not happy. Good afternoon, Postmatic. Hope you're doing well. Okay, I think that is it. Copy that. Twitter. Test indeed. I can see the testiness. I do keep hitting the microphone with my arm. I do apologize. Bit of a cramped situation happening. So I can lift this up just a little bit. Alright. Okay. So today is a varied day. We're doing a nature of predators, a human from the dungeon, a Tifos and a re-Tifos. Not quite 15,000 words, just over 10,000. Or just under 10,000. Oh, just over 10,000. Which we should be able to do in our allotted time. So, here we go. Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to today's narration, the web series The Nature of Predators Book 2. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 32. Memory Transcription Subject Taylor Trench, Human Colonist. Date Standardized Human Time, June 25th, 2160. The next generation of humans were a third of the way through development and ectogenesis. Soon, there wouldn't be only thousands left of my kind. When I remembered what I was fighting for, it gave me the willpower to push through the hell General Radai was throwing at us. Ever since our engagement with the Sith Kids, the Resket seemed hell-bent on trying to break us, more than he had before. He'd made us run laps for hours, having some surprise that when we didn't crack us. Well, it dropped Quana and other non-humans, but not the tennis recruits. His next resort was extreme weather conditions, depriving us of the cooling systems of our helmets, which proved handy. It proved a handy adaptation. I'd grown accustomed to aching all over at the end of each day, collapsing in my bunk with little energy to expend. Sleep was no guarantee, since Radai loved to burst in at the late hours of night, forcing us to get up and hustle to a mission. The Resket definitely had it out for us, and the way he'd spoken to Telos' soldiers as of late resembled Mufani's vitriol. At least boot camp was almost over, though I was seething at the lack of activity on the war front. Why hadn't the consortium sent out the cavalry? They'd had 100 years to plan for this eventuality. There was no reason progress should be so slow. "Back up, Charisse," Gress was saying as I returned to the dorm from a half-assed shower. "You're telling me that you wear these high heels to look taller, balancing on these tiny stilts. Balancing on that tiny stilt? Why does everything you do have to be so cute?" She rolled her eyes at the Krev. "Maybe in another life, back on Earth, I'd be a fashionista. It's interesting to think of all the trends we had, the styles that gained popularity. I've never been a girly girl, but still. I want to experience Good morning, Joseph. Hope you're doing well. I want the experience of just wandering one of those retro malls and shopping for the hell of it. Carefree, like we were... Carefree, like we were before... Carefree, like we were before aliens. Then we should set up one of these malls. I mean, I myself prefer online shopping, but... What do you shop for, Grace? I interjected. Overcoms. What do you shop for, Grace? I interjected. Overcombs. I only asked to brush your hair once. You're the one who grew it out and tempted me. Connor's head snapped towards us. Grace forgets that you're a sapient being yet again. He treats you like you're some cute thing without your own wants and desires. All I did was ask, Connor. Taylor turned me down, so I dropped it. I can't help that his face screams adorable. That doesn't mean I don't know he's sapient. Where did your daughter get the idea to beg to keep him? Beg to keep him. I should have never told you about that, I scoffed. I should have never told you about that, I scoffed. Lecker as a child. It was unbelievable, but a little humorous. Grace slumped his shoulders. I was horrified when she said that. She doesn't understand what she's asking. Taylor wouldn't make a good pet. He's too temperamental, Charisse commented. Exactly, I declared, grinning. See, everyone knows that. You weren't supposed to agree with that. Well, I did. And Connor, you can feck off. You can back the feck off. You weren't supposed to agree. Well, I did. And Connor, you can feck back off to wherever you were doing before you butted into our conversation. The Jasler pinned her ears back and bared her teeth. You already make a great pet, and you don't even see it. Yeah, heard. So, Grace, back to your shopping habits. What do you even do for fun, other than raising overs or lacquer? Connor angled an ear towards the conversation. He watches cats jump. He watches Jaslip kids die. Grace drew a shuddering breath, but he ignored her. Well, I used to do improv classes before I got married. That was how I met my wife, Nebby. I always had a knack for getting into character on the spot. Knowing what I know now, maybe I've gone into theater. I got a lead role in most school plays I auditioned for. You were a theater kid. You know what? I can see that, Charisse commented. I'm picturing you doing a really dramatic reading of Hamlet right about now, I offered. Grace leapt towards me, jabbing a claw in my face. Get thee to a nunnery, I snickered. Someone's been reading the Bard's works in his spare time. How about no? That's not your line, Ophelia. Try again. I think that Hamlet had more to say before... That's not your line, Ophelia. Try again. I think that's Hamlet. Ophelia? That's not your line, Ophelia. Try again. I think that Hamlet had more to say before Ophelia talked, Grassy boy. Go brush up your reading. The only thing I intend to brush up is you. Get over here. The crab pulled an overcomb out of his bag without looking back and extended it towards me. I leapt away, holding out a hand to swat it away. The brush clattered to the ground, but that didn't stop Grass. I yelped as the comms initiate chased after me and grabbed at the underside of my upper arm with his claws. The green-scaled mammal's machinations proved devious, lightly prodding and scratching the ticklish area. Involuntary laughter took over as I jerked my arm away from the persistent fiend. It was difficult to breathe through the hysterics. Unrelenting, he tried to poke my sides again. He tried to poke my sides next, but I managed to fend his plans. But I managed to fend off his plans. What are you doing? I protested. Chris paused for a moment. Primates played through tickling. Your laughing fit betrayed that humans do as well. You can't just do that. I can, and I did. What are you going to do about it? I lunged towards the floor, swiping the overcomb. Rather than resisting, Gress issued a happy sigh as I scratched his spine. This dark blue tongue flitted out of his mouth with contentment. That move hadn't produced the intended results. What an irritating creature he was. He'd probably ask me to do it again. I was glad that I got him to club him over the head once, that day on the landing pad, and I was thinking of braining him a second time right now. What had I been introduced to for all the... What had I been reduced to, all for an exchange program nonsense, to increase my humiliation? General Rodai walked in as Krev was leaning into the comb, and I grudgingly kept moving. I leapt to my feet in a hurry, trying to straighten up. Trench with me. Trench with me, you're meeting the Mayor Hathaway and myself in command center, the Rescue squawked. I tried to smooth over my still damp hair. Yes, sir, I'm right behind you. What is this about? If Hathaway wants me back at his office, first off, I thought that he hadn't forgiven me for the drill feck-up, and secondly, I wouldn't take it. I don't want to be a pet anymore, because I was his pet much more than I ever have been with Gress. That's a decent day. Nice and sunny. Not too hot, not too cold. The training camp had become a permanent base, with advantageous... permanent. The training camp had become a permanent base, with its advantageous location on Tennis's hillside. Ever since the Federation incursion, the Trumbull had diverted their resources away from building up our colony. Everything that they had went into generating more ships and weapons, as many as they could possibly crank out. The metropolis was all but complete, yet most humans weren't enjoying the new amenities. Word of our system's invasion caused almost every settler to volunteer for some wartime role. The abandonment of our build-up, after all, meant that there would be no cage around Tennis to safeguard our home. Sir, if the planet falls, the only humans left are the ones still growing in artificial wombs right now. I hope we're doing something about the threat, I ventured. If I may, you seemed to be a bit hesitant when Sifkits arrived, almost as if you didn't want to attack them. Redai's steps became more forceful and pronounced, his lanky legs shoving down into the dirt. I should have preferred to gather information and weigh possible attempts for other methods, because now we're locked on a path of all-out war. I don't like that. I don't take that lightly. Neither do I. My entire species got wiped out, sir, in our last bout. I sure as shit want my revenge. What made you decide to attack the Sifkits if you preferred to sit on your wings? Good morning, Kandaria. Hope you're doing well. I recognize the crew would not heed my commands if I didn't order you to annihilate them. You and the majority of the human forces at my command displayed gross insubordination. You panicked at the mere sight of them. I hope that I have not made a dreadful mistake. Either way, I've cemented a ghastly place in the history books, and I've blood on my wingtips. We couldn't let them bomb our home. We couldn't let them find us. Not again. I know you humans feel that way. However, you've proven that you're not reliable assets in the field. Too obstinate, too headstrong. While your close-quarters combat skills are excellent, I can't justify trusting you to the command of any non-human officer. This is why I've been testing you by the elements. Because the only way you'll see direct action is if electronics go down. But, sir... Silence! Humans being briefed on our plans is a courtesy. You're only here because you're the liaison from Avor. I wanted this war. Good afternoon, Dave. Hope you're doing well. You wanted this war, Trench, so let me fucking win it. Drones are more efficient than you could ever dream of being. I held my tongue as Redai stormed into his command center. I had to jog to keep up with the 9-foot-tall avian's lengthy strides. A holographic star map was projected from a large display, not dissimilar to the not dissimilar from those Terrans once had at the center of our bridges. It seemed to be a full display of 1,000 light-year bubble composing Federation space, with all known systems highlighted. Mayor Hathaway, riding a resurgence in popularity with the drastic improvement Tellus had seen, barely acknowledged me. He rebranded himself under the motto of a new era of workers' rights, though he didn't deserve the credit he'd received from that. I resented having been his fall guy and kissing the ring for so long. Yep, drone's definitely better. The mayor stroked his graying beard and thought, "We need to reassure the populace of Tellus that they are safe, and that we have everything under control. The last thing we need is unrest. The citizenry is too fickle. How do you suggest we go about this, General?" Management of the colonists is your domain. I'm here to relay the consortium's plan for the initial phase of the war, since you're a member state, Redeye responded. Our plan is to utilize the deception strike. Decapitation. Our plan is to utilize the decapitation strike. We're sending an overwhelming drone force against the whole world of each of the enemy's founders, the Varsul, the Kolshians. The Varsul and the Kolshians. We take down the peak of the Federation's power. Only 2 targets. What about the other 300 worlds? I blurted. Irritation flashed in the Risket's eyes. 3 targets swarmed by 150,000 ships each. 3 targets swarmed by 150,000 ships each. We do not want to leave. We do want to leave a significant bulk of our forces here to protect the consortium worlds in case they come looking for us. Aren't you the one who is so focused on protecting Tellus? Yes, sir, that is sensible. Who was the 3rd target you mentioned? Nishtal, the Crocattle world. Radeye's words brought a gleefulness to my brain at the thought of the birds who'd eliminated us getting their just desserts. An old powerful member that spearheaded the extermination fleet. As one of the most anti-predator factions, they must be crushed to break their Federation's will. I love your plan. It's great. Mayor Hathaway heaved a sigh. Let the grown-ups speak, Taylor. General, I am certain that last target will buy us some political leeway. How about... But how will we maintain contact with these vessels so that we can know the results, or touch base in case they need an update to the directives? Our drones will be out of range of our FTL comms network, the Risket replied. We'll try to drop buoys discreetly behind us, though each departure from subspace risks detection and leaves traces of our tech that they could find. It also is just flat out a soft target that could be neutralized. In range of their primary systems, we're better off tapping into their infrastructure. Then it's possible that we'll lose contact with the drones for large chunks of time. That is correct. If they can't uplink with us after the battle, they're slated to make several attempts by doubling back. The footage of their battle and any intelligence gained is invaluable. Regardless, barring an immediate surrender, the secondary targets will be powerful and loyal Federation members, such as the Multi and the Dresden, and most certainly the Dirtian. The last one is extremely influential and well-connected. That's awesome to hear, Exilus. Very, very good. I cleared my throat. Okay, and what about the Arxor? The Arxor, while monstrous, can be left until the Federation's fall. They're on the opposite side of Fed space, so they don't directly threaten us. We can worry about them after we hope. We can worry about them after what we hope will be a quick, utter collapse of our dear neighbors. They might surrender after decisive wins in the places I mentioned, preventing the need for further loss of preventing the loss of civilian lives. Hathaway pursed his lips. In the meantime, in the event that we do need to go further, I must ask about our allies, the Bendo.
For all of their flaws, we remember that they tried to help us and planned to fight with us at Earth. I doubt public opinion is in favor of killing them. Vendel Prime is designated friendly and will be avoided unless we are given no choice. We listened to your story. We heard they aren't like the rest. Thank you. We greatly appreciate being filled in and having our concerns met as part of your organization. It's delightful to be included. Retired Deputy said, You're also to be appraised of the war's developments as they happen. We're in this together, Mayor. Let's just make sure your people don't forget that. I'll do what I can to keep them in line. You'll find me to be a dependable advocate for the consortium. It is the least that I can do in exchange for your bountiful aid. We did gift you many things to get you off the ground. All we ask in return is respect and support. You're dismissed, Trench. As Mayor Hathaway said, the adults have things we need to discuss on our own. I'll see myself out, sir, I retorted. My mind was whirling as I strolled out of the command tent. I was the first person on the space to know what we were taking. I was the first person on the space to know that we were taking the fight to the prey Xenos. I was the first person on the space to know that we were taking the fight to the prey Xenos, and it had brought my enthusiasm through the roof. Humanity wouldn't have to fear the Federation coming after us if we ended our threat. Humanity wouldn't have to worry. Humanity wouldn't have to fear the Federation coming after us if we ended their threat. We'd bury them in the crib. We'd bury them in their crib the way they'd done to us over 2 decades ago. It was a shame that Radai ruled out future action in person, though. It was a shame. It was a shame. It was a shame that Radai ruled out future action. It was a shame that Radai ruled out future action in person, though I grasped that drones had a higher efficacy. It was a glorious view when I'd watched the certificates blink out of existence live, as particle beams lit them up like a firecracker. A goofy smile lingered on my face, imagining the first images of dead crow cattle homeworld. An eye for an eye. I wonder what Gress would think of that saying. I can't tell whether he'd say it exemplified a primate's violent tendencies or straight up agree. Charisse and probably Quana want those blue birds flayed as much as I do. In my distracted stupor, I didn't notice a blur of pink out of my periphery. A Resket bowled his head into my side, flinging me backwards several feet. Pain signals shot through various parts of my body like a pinball machine. I struggled to pick myself up and looked at my assailant. Trainer Mafani had ambushed me when I turned back towards the dorms. He must have seen me tailing after a die earlier, and despite the general's warnings to stay away, he seized his long-awaited opportunity when I exited alone. Wasn't it dishonorable on Tenet to utilize elements of surprise on an unsuspecting victim? You terrorist-loving chatterbox snitch! You sick General Radai on me, and now I might never train recruits again! Venom dripped from Mafani's voice as he stamped a foot onto my spine, pushing me back into the dirt. I was humiliated because of some lesser cloaca. Cloaca sucker. Cloaca sucker, who tried to govern my speech. You'll pay for everything, Taylor. I struggled to breathe with the weight passing. I struggled to breathe with the weight pressing down on me. It's over. I don't want to quarrel with you. It's not about what you want, Primate. I want you dead for what you've done to me, and I have no moral qualms about fighting dirty with anyone who sides with terrorists. That someone isn't me, so stop, please. You've made your point. I'm a refugee from a dead world. You don't want to kill anyone from an endangered species. You can't.
What happens if Radai finds out about this?
Radai is preoccupied. He is not here to save you this time. I'm going to tie you up, leave you out in the desert that I hear you wanted to explore, to bake in the sun. I hear you craved. I hear you craved on your face so badly. I'll put a beacon on you so that you are found in a few days, and they see the pitiful way you died. They'll find you bound like an animal, having soiled yourself and struggled against the restraints until your fingers bled. When you hallucinate for a drop of water, I hope you think of me.
That's sadistic. I don't want to die, please, sir. I'll do whatever you want.
I'm going to inject you with a paralytic, so you won't be able to struggle or talk until it's too late. Enjoy being locked in your own mind, Taylor Trench.
Mavani jammed a needle into my neck while I tried to scream for help. Unfortunately, I couldn't generate much noise with his weight pressing onto my lungs. As my mind remained conscious, my body refused to obey my commands within minutes. I found myself wishing that Gress was here to save me, to play the role of hostage negotiator as he'd done in the past. However, as the twisted rescue trainer began carting me towards a tucked-away vehicle, there was no one around to save me. I'd made plenty of mistakes over my lifetime, but I didn't deserve to die like this. Terror plagued my mind as I was hurled into the back of the truck and rope was coiled tightly around my limbs. End of chapter. Boop-a-doop-a-doop boop. Updoot. Close. Milk. Hydrate. Boomer juice. Use willpower to try get the processing to happen quicker. Boomer juice, boomer juice. Yeah, I'll be right back in a minute. I leave you with music and chair. All right, back. On to next thing. The Human from a Dungeon. Chapter 73. I do apologize if today's stream is rushed, but yeah, life is life. You gotta do what you gotta do. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of The Human from the Dungeon. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Human from a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 73, Nick Smith, Adventurer Level 7, Human American. We watched the rain smash itself against whatever was protecting the clearing. It was torrential, covering the entirety of the otherwise invisible barrier, and I didn't look forward to leaving once our business was done. We'd be soaked for the rest of the day, at least. So, if you had to liken it to another smell, what would you say it smells like? Reba said. The rain? I asked. Yeah. I thought about it for a moment. There's two smells. The one before it rains, which smells kind of like clear air and fresh water mixed together. I'd call it crispy and cold. But the cold isn't a temperature thing, more of a feeling. Right, no, I think I get it. And the other smell? Well, that's the smell that you get after the rain. Kind of smells different from place to place. But it's like the smell you get from opening a water skin on a hot day and dry day. But it's like the smell you... What? It's kind of like the smell you get when opening a water skin on a hot and dry day. Like moist, but in a good way. I wonder if this is a distinction between humans and meh, or if it is a cultural distinction, Yook said. Well, I read on the internet that there were people who can... Well, I read on the internet that there were people that can't smell the rain, I shrugged. So maybe it's depending on where you live. Why would you even need to smell rain anyway? Nash asked grumpily. What purpose does that serve? I shrugged again. Never really gave it any thought, if I'm honest. But if our current circumstances were slightly different, then I guess it could have come in handy. I guess being able to tell if it's going to rain without seeing the sky comes in handy when you spend most of your time indoors, I replied. So you know not to go outside unprepared. Wait. What's the internet? Gandhi asked. Do you do a lot of fishing back in your world or something? The thought of catching fish with computer cables made me chuckle, but I proceeded to explain the internet to the best of my abilities. York and Nash nodded along because they'd heard it before, but the others were absolutely enraptured. For fun, I threw in a couple of funny metaphors, like how we tricked rocks into thinking, and we shoot electricity at each other through stretched-out pieces of metal and glass. I find your society fascinating, Larry said once I finished. The thought of creating such things without magic assistance is mind-boggling. Well, we had a saying back home. Any sufficiently advanced technology might as well be equivalent to magic, I recited. I guess whoever said that didn't imagine a place like this existing, though. Perhaps, York interjected, though magic isn't exactly unknown. It has rules and structures to it, just like the technology you describe. When one takes into account the Kierkegaard, one could claim that the very essence of magic is technological in nature, just a technology that mortals are unfamiliar with. I'd love to know exactly what the Kierkegaard is, I said. We told you. Like we told you, nobody really knows unless... Nash looked at Larry. No, not even I know much about it. The Lich shook his skull. There are many that assume that it is a higher being that is allowed to direct interaction with mortals, and provides them with boons based on how accomplished that mortal becomes. Though my limited interactions with it have led me to believe that it isn't alive. Perhaps it is a remnant of an ancient civilization that created the steel golems that we found in dungeons. A pang of nervousness grew in my stomach. Higher beings, the ones that were watching me for the sake of their entertainment. Is a Kuragard only one of them? Is the Kuragard really one of them? Or maybe a machine designed by them? I know that I rely on it for my spells, but are my skills also part of whatever system it's part of? Can they just pull the plug if I'm not amusing enough? We've discovered some literatures on one of those dungeons that indicate that the golems are actually machines, York said. They aren't magical in nature. They're based on a forge craft. Truly, how interesting. Larry rubbed his jaw. If it isn't oh, that monster's fighting back. If it isn't magical in nature, then anyone could make one, yes? Probably not. It takes an understanding of things that'll likely elude us for quite some time, York sighed. The documents that were discovered described how to forge the metal plating and how to arrange the innards, but not what the innards are made of. I see. Probably wires and a battery, I added. Power storage, York asked. So they do use magic? No, batteries use acids to create an electrical charge, I think. The electricity throws through the wires and causes the parts to move. It's a bit above my... It's a bit above my knowledge level, I admitted. There's different things that limit the amount of electricity that move through different parts, which cause them to move differently somehow. York and Larry fell deep in thought. Before any follow-up questions could be asked, though, a soft pop sounded from behind us. A grumpy Fae holding several stone tablets regarded us coldly. The deciphering is complete, Björn said. I've altered the tablets accordingly. Thank you, Larry said, rising to collect the tablets. I stood as well and walked over. My heart began to beat faster and faster with each step I took. Would this be it? Will I finally figure out how to get home? Larry handed me the first tablet, and I began to read. I am Mikhail Rodriguez, and I have been given this journal to document my experiments. With everyone waiting patiently, I read the passage aloud. My heart felt as if it was going to burst. The person who wrote this was human, I'm certain of it. All of the odd names I've heard so far, and not a single one of them was even close to the ones I knew. Plus, it was originally in English. Well, what else does it say? Rebus asked. I cleared my throat, and I continued. To comply with the project security, I'll be using a Vignia. Wagner, that's the one. To comply with the project security, I'll be using a Wagner cipher, which will shift every entry. The keys will be documented elsewhere, as appropriate. I've just been revived from stasis, and do not know the current date. I've created a rudimentary calendar that I'll use to mark progress. This is the first day's entry, or pre-entry, if you will. A Vignia cipher? A Wagner cipher, I asked the archway. Was that difficult to? Of course it was. I couldn't even do it without the keys. Vierne crossed their arms. I had to take out some rather inconvenient debt to obtain that knowledge. Now, read. Okay, sorry. Day 1. My revival went without any serious issues. The minor issues were simply a discomfort and confusion which should not have occurred. The pod I'd been sleeping in has been adjusted. There are no answers for who adjusted the pods, nor how or why. An unfortunate aspect of this modification is that the data in the pods have been wiped. As such, there seems to be no There seems to be no proper way to tell how long we've slept for. All we know is that the modifications occurred approximately 4,000 years ago. There are very few of us, and we have little in the way of aid from the local populace. Apparently, they've been exterminating us wherever they find us. I've been given no explanation for this behavior, and I suspect that the actions of the surviving members of the Manus organization are to blame. I find myself frustrated with these conditions. These people don't seem to know what has happened, or they simply won't tell me. They estimate that They estimate there are fewer than 1,000 humans that we can rely on at the moment. The pods were supposed to keep us in stasis until we were long forgotten. But something happened 4,000 years ago, and many of us were revived. Each generation revived replacements. Each generation revived replacements, and now we're here. Hardly any of us left, and with a mountain of things we need to do to secure our future. First, we need to find a way to perform extra-dimensional travel. Next, we need to revive and gather the remaining humans. Finally, we need to escape from here. This is not our home. The research required is... The research required of me is odd. Demons and angels, or daemons and angels, if you use the local parlance, have knowledge of portals that we require. There have been several instances of extra-dimensional invasion, though typically on small scale. We need to find out how they are able to piece the fabric of reality.
Well, that's ominous, Rebus laughed. That's the cult, right? The ones that caused the demon invasion. Guess they figured it out.
Keep reading, Bien said coldly. Day 4. Today, I received my first batch of test subjects and began my research. Dwarves and elves that had been living near an entry point for the previous day manic invasion. A tear in the fabric of reality. We have a lot of data on baselines for these species, and given what I have to do to these subjects, I doubt that I want to know how we got that data. I have another journal for the raw findings themselves, but even a cursory vivisection reveals mutations. These tears in fabric of reality actually impact the surrounding environment. This provides a reasonable explanation for the monsters that one encounters on the surface very regularly, but we haven't been able to find any sort of measurable radiation emanating from the tears. Day 9. The previous days were much the same as my previous entry, cutting, carving, studying. Before all of this happened, I would have been sickened by what I'm doing. I suppose on some level I still am, but not in the way that I should be. Poetic that I should have to set aside my humanity to save humanity. The Malice Organization. The Malice Organization keeps bringing me test subjects, and I keep testing on these subjects. My findings are slim, though. There are mutations, but I can't find... There are mutations, but I can find no hints as to what exactly is causing them. At first, I suspected cancer, but biopsies reveal that the mutations don't contain cancerous cells. They are perfectly functional, just anomalous. Their muscles split in two, extra organs, extra sets of teeth. Even the brain is subject to these oddities. One thing the mutations have in common is that they rarely impact the subject's quality of life. Day 15. We have had to move. Our location was discovered by the locals, and they immediately mobilized an armed force to eradicate us. Thankfully, the Malice Organization was well prepared for this eventuality, and had plenty of sympathizers in a nearby city. And had plenty of sympathizers in a nearby city. The move was inconvenient, but otherwise uneventful. The new location is more cramped, though. No new discoveries have been made. Day 22. A sorcerer nearby has created an object that can detect magic, specifically the emissions created by the use of spells. This revelation led to a discussion which revealed that my anatomy has been altered to include an artificial magic core, and everything else necessary to cast magic. My demands for further information were met with callous shrugs. Either they don't know who did this to me, or they aren't going to tell me. Returning to the aforementioned device, Dr. Samuels is working on reverse engineering it. My talents for engineering are slim to none, so I can't really help her. That's a shame, as I would like an excuse to get closer to her. It would be nice to have companionship, perhaps even a lover, but that's just a pipe dream. My work is far too gruesome for anyone to be able to forgive me for it, let alone look past it. Worse yet, it hasn't resulted in any new revelations. Day 42. I've been neglecting my journal, mostly because nothing interesting has been happening. Today, however, Dr. Samuels finished a project. Tomorrow we'll see what we can find out. I'm hoping for a breakthrough. Day 43. The radiation from the tears is now confirmed to be magical. From what we've been able to find, there are two types of magic, Type 1 and Type 2, T1 and T2. T1 magic is emitted by the environment, trees, rocks, etc. T2 magic is emitted by creatures that have magical core. How either magic is produced is unknown. This device can detect this magic and determine which type of magic it is. The tears are radiating T2 magic. When someone casts a spell, we get the reading that is a mixture of T1 and T2 magic. T3 magic? What is coming from the tears is pure T2 though. The significance of this is currently unknown. Day 47. New mutations radiate T2 magic. The experiment was difficult to set up, had to create a life support system for various organs without using magic, in a world that is nearly devoid of technology. Should get a Nobel Prize for this accomplishment, but the confirmation of my hypothesis is good enough for now. New mutations continue to generate The mutations continue to generate T2 magical emissions even after the host has perished, but stop once the organ is damaged beyond repair. If we ever need to generate T2 magic, this knowledge could become useful. Now though, all it does is point me in a direction. We still need to know how to manipulate the tears. To do this, we may need to know more about T2 magic. All we have left is a handful of elves, going to need more to learn more. Ithrima threw up. She'd been looking queasy, but the final entry tipped the scales for her. Mako comforted her as she struggled to regain control of her stomach. "Gods, that's terrible," Aina said. "Carving people up like that." "Yeah," I said softly. "Read," Bien said angrily, becoming more irritable by the second. Day 55. Dr. Samuels is dead. The autopsy was grim. I concluded that her cause of death was acute kidney injury caused by dehydration from food poisoning that she failed to report and get treatment for. It must have been painful. The bacteria that killed her is unfamiliar, but should have been treatable with fluoroquinolones. Ow. Quinolones. Is this an actual thing? Pronouns? Just gonna turn the speakers off so we don't deafen you, but I will deafen me. Fluoroquinolones. Okay. With fluoroquinolones or ampicillin. We have plenty of antibiotics, so her death was completely avoidable. Confirming her cause of death was just as much a shock as her death itself. She should have known better. I would like to mourn her, but I don't actually miss her. The part of me that would miss her died long before she did. Plus, we don't have any booze. Day 67. I've discovered a method of causing a magical core to radiate T2 magical energy. Unfortunately, this radiation is a mere fraction of what is being emitted by the tears. The tears emit roughly 200 times more magic. Day 69. Introducing a radiating magical core to a tear did nothing, as suspected. Day 84. Introducing 50 radiating magical cores to a tear did nothing. Day 85. Argued with leadership today. They wanted to try 100 radiating cores, massive waste of resources, unlikely to produce any measurable result. Not to mention the cost in lives, which I didn't. pointed out that 100 subjects would have to die to do that would have probably convinced them to... Pointing out that 100 subjects would have to die to do what they're... Pointing out that 100 subjects would have to die to do that would have probably convinced them to move forward with the stupid idea. At first I thought the plan was to escape from here, but now I think there's a more sinister endgame at play. Day 91. A daemon has been captured. It has been interrogated, but the results of that are being kept from me. My job is to examine their physiology. Daemons heal a lot better than owls and dwarves do. Gods, Revis said in disgust. This guy is fecked up, I replied. Not all humans are like this, I promise. No worries, Nick, Gaddy said. We don't know you at all that well. We don't know you all that well, but we can tell you're not like this Mikhail guy. It is interesting to listen to someone go from academic to monster, Yook said, though a little nauseating. A loud snap rang through the air, causing all of us to jump. Vian looked at us angrily. Nick, the archfey growled, we do not have time. Read now, before you lose this chance. End of story. End of chapter. Do. Close that. Wait for the computer to do the thing. Some hydration. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of Read T-Fuss, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Joining a Human Crew, written by Entangled Bottles. Gorlangs didn't get what the big deal about humans was all about. They were far from the strongest, fastest, fiercest, or smartest warriors around. Yet the galaxy was abuzz with their exploits. Thus Gorlangs hadn't hesitated when offered a mercenary job at a human outfit, and had signed up, eager to prove that Sermians were much tougher than humans could ever be. Still, he spent an extra time to properly polish his armor, and when he entered the human ship, he walked with as much pride and dignity as he could muster. "Ah, you must be Corlax, our new explosives guy. I'm Captain James Kobayashi." Kobayashi. Happy to be... Kobayashi. Happy to have you on board. As you should be. Good to hear some confidence. Be sure you can get back... Be sure... But sure you can back it up. We do take on harder missions than most outfits our size. It'll be no trouble. I've been a mercenary since before you were born, and will still be in my prime when you retire. It'll take more than a few tough missions to scare me. Grand. We've been having trouble replacing Mickey, our old demolitions expert. Fifth time that we've had to head to port because our schedule... Fifth time we've had to head to port before schedule because the new hire couldn't keep up with our pace. Was thinking of making a trip back to Seoul if we didn't find someone to stick around soon. There should be no need for that, so long as you keep paying me. That's what I like to hear. Now, get your stuff sorted. Get your stuff sorted. Get to know the rest of the crew and rest up. We'll be touching ground for a job in 11 hours. Aye, Captain. The first mission went off without a hitch. In fact, Corlax didn't just hold his own, but excelled. The humans seemed impressed by his performance, but still skeptical. He'd show them, in time, just how large a difference between him and them. 10 hours and 3 missions later, Corlax walked into his cabin and sighed a sigh of relief as he sat on his bed. Gods above, this captain ran his men hard. Corlax could appreciate that, but he seemed to overdo it a bit. Still, nothing he couldn't handle. 1 week and 37 missions later, Corlax shambled into his cabin and collapsed onto his bed. Demons! The humans were goddamn demons. The first 2 days he outperformed them. By the 4th day, he was slowing them down slightly. By the 6th, he was struggling to do his job. Well, the humans hardly seemed worse for wear. Now, on the 8th day, he'd barely managed to complete 2 missions, after which the humans disappointedly announced that they'd do the rest of the day's missions without him, and head back to port tomorrow. Corlax had protested, said that if he could simply rest for the time that it'd take to head to port, he could get another... He could go another round. The humans had looked skeptically at each other, sighed, and the captain told him to come into his office. Still insistent on not giving up, Corlax had stumbled his way there and sat down heavily on the offered chair. Seeming somewhat reluctant, with a look of pity about him, the captain had handed him a data pad. On it was an excerpt from his ship's manifest, from 2 months ago, when they'd still had an all-human crew. Corlax looked at the captain skeptical, but the captain still, with that pitiful look in his eyes, urged him to read through it. Corlax almost broke down right there. 9! Back when each job was done by a human, they'd averaged 9 jobs a day. He'd been sure that they were running double pace as a hazard. Cheers, Dave. Hope you have a good one. He'd been sure they were running double pace as a hazing ritual. But no, far from it. They'd been running at half pace so he could keep up. I'm sorry, Corlax, the human captain said. I wish that we could keep you on. I wish that we could keep you on, but we just can't afford it. My crew, they all need the money. It's why we're in this line of work. At half pace we might manage, but any less than that, long term, it's just not viable. Wish we could just take on 3 of you all, but the truth is the matter of the ship can't fit any more crew, and I can't afford a bigger one, especially since this one is already pushing the limits of the special scout class. I'd have to get certified for a light cruiser to upgrade, and, well, that'd cost almost as much as a new ship, and with all the retrofitting we had to do in this piece to get it to serve our needs, well, injured aside, I'd be lucky to get more than scrap price. Though she's worth her weight 100 times over, It's just not viable. Unable to muster a proper response, Corlangs had muttered, "Thank you for your time, Captain," and shambled out of the office and over to his bunk. 2 days later, an exhausted Corlang stepped off the ship. After another 3 days of resting, he shambled into one of the station's many bars, eventually loudly and drunkenly joining a discussion about humans. No, you guys don't get it. Humans aren't stronger than the Cerulean, smarter than a Grey, or just better shot than a Sprack. I've served with some of them recently, and I can firmly say that I am both stronger, faster, and a better shot than most of them. However, in 1 month they completed more missions than most outfits do in a year, and even Undarian death squads would be hard-pressed to match their rate, even for a mere week. Humans are the scariest bunch I've ever come across. Not because they work fast or because they work smart, but because they work hard. Even a Grey could outpace him. Even a Grey could outpace them for an hour or two, but beyond that, I barely lasted a week at half pace. I am a Sermaean elite. At their normal pace, I'd have lasted 2 days. Then they keep that pace all year, bar a few religious holidays. And the scariest thing, that's not even special. Harder than most humans work, sure, but did you know that back on Earth, a normal job schedule is 8 hours a day? And that back in the day, there used to be a poor people that worked twice that, just to afford living. The poor, they're low class, are capable of working every single waking hour of their life. None of our legends can do that. That is why humans are terrifying. They just don't stop. End of story. Boop doop. Story number 2, Blinded by the Light, written by Alt Cypher. Sergeant Ambassador Ho said, inches from his face, "Did you show up to work drunk again?" The words were clipped and hard to distinguish between the ambassador's clenched teeth. "No, sure," Sergeant O'Hanassy said, his eyes squinted but open. O'Shaughnessy. His eyes... No, sir, Sergeant O'Hanassy. No, sir, Sergeant O'Shaughnessy. No, sir, Sergeant O'Shaughnessy said, his eyes squinted a bit. "I am hungover, but I'm not drunk." "You damn well better not shit your... You damn well better get your crap together, Sergeant," Ambassador Ho said. "This negotiation is at a critical point, and if one of my senior guards screws this up, I'll make it my life's work to..." The door whisked open, and the dragon delegation strolled in. They were graceful, seemed so to float above the ground as they entered. Ambassador Ho knew it had been an optical illusion which they played up in the negotiations, but it did little to lessen his natural reaction of awe. He tossed a final scowl at Sergeant... He tossed a final scowl at Sergeant O'Shaughnessy before turning to the aliens with a wide, bright smile. "Good morning, Ambassador. Ho said. "Welcome back. I hope your evening was restful."
"Not as restful as we had hoped," the Dragon Ambassador said. "One of our junior members seems to have been out quite until late." One of our junior members seems to have been out until quite late.
"Yes," Ambassador Ho said. "I can see how that would be worrying. That's a trait both of our races share."
"It is unfortunate you should mention that, Ambassador," said Dragon. "This junior member was out with one of your people."
Ambassador Ho's blood ran cold. He had spent years working on this negotiation. His career was at stake in these meetings. If one of his subordinates had done something reckless, all of the ambassador's work would evaporate like an early morning dew. Ho! It was all the Ambassador Ho could manage.
"A sergeant something or the other," the Dragon said. "I'm afraid my underling was having some difficulty recalling too many details from last night. It seems that both our races also share a fondness and weakness for ethanol in all its various forms."
"A sergeant, you say?" Ambassador Ho said. He kept his face rigid mask of politeness. Out of the corner of his eyes, he caught Sergeant O'Shaughnessy standing at attention in perfect mirth. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught Sergeant O'Shaughnessy. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught Sergeant O'Shaughnessy standing at attention in perfect military form.
"From what we could tell," the Dragon said, "there were stories from your homeworld that were shared with great many attendees at some establishments. My junior delegate told me that the sergeant led the room in some sort of ritual wherein they told the story collaboratively."
"I'm sorry, collaborative storytelling?" Ambassador Ho felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. Until he could stabilize himself, he felt it was best to follow his counterpart's lead.
"It was a strange phenomenon, from the way my underling describes it," the Dragon said. "There must have been 70 humans in there, yet every one of them could relate the story flawlessly. In fact, relating the story, sometimes multiple times, seemed to bring them great joy."
That's fascinating," Ambassador Ho said. He was, very slowly, starting to form a scene in his head. "O'Shaughnessy, would you happen to know a place that might fit this description?" Sergeant O'Shaughnessy cleared his throat and said, "I've heard of a karaoke bar in the Fishman district that might fit the description, Mr. Ambassador."
"I see," Ambassador Ho said.
"Tell me, Ambassador, did your junior delegate happen to have any details of these stories?"
"Quite a few, yes," the Dragon said. "There was one about a great proud warrior who would be compared to a vicious guardian beast. I believe his name was Brown?"
"Leroy Brown, maybe," Ambassador Ho said.
"Yes, that sounds right," the Dragon said. "There was another story of a political... There was another story of a more philosophical nature. It asked the same question that has bedeviled my people for ages, of the nature of reality and what it means for a thing to be real. These questions invariably drove the questioner mad, and he turns to a matriarch of his family for solace."
"I'm sorry, I don't," Ambassador Ho said. Sergeant O'Shaughnessy coughed out the word
"Bohemian."
"Did it perhaps end with the saying nothing really matters?" Ambassador Ho asked.
"I'm not certain," the Dragon said. "My inferior was a bit fuzzy on the details. The last story he told us about was where one of you humans faced a devil himself in some sort of contest. The human struggles against the devil in some sort of artistic endeavor, from what my inferior could remember, and eventually beats him. The human wins some kind of item made of gold."
Did the contest happen in a place called Georgia, by any chance?" Ambassador Ho asked.
"That place sounds familiar," the Dragon said. "Perhaps it did.
My underling tells me he has never seen such relationships amongst our people as he saw last night. This is his first trip off-world, and I'm afraid that temptation to explore was too much. However, he has spoken very highly of your species, and I believe that we have much to offer each other. Perhaps when our negotiations conclude, we can find this mystery sergeant, and we can all accompany him to his storytelling house." Ambassador Ho smiled. "Hello, bot. Goodbye, bot." Ambassador Ho smiled. He wasn't sure if it was a genuine or a fake, but he smiled nonetheless. "Perhaps we can, Ambassador. Now, if you'd like to get started." Late that evening, long after the diplomatic delegation had left, and long after their work was done, Ambassador Ho went to find Sergeant O'Shaughnessy. Without saying a word, Ambassador Ho pulled 2 large domination pills from his inside pocket and handed them to the sergeant. "I'll buy the next round, Sergeant." Sergeant O'Shaughnessy took the cash and smiled. "Yes, sir," he said. "Shall I reserve a table at the karaoke bar where we're done here?" "Yeah, I suppose," Ambassador Ho said. "But maybe we should review the song list first. Make sure there's nothing too risque." "But, sir," "But, sir," Sergeant said. "But, sir," said the sergeant. "But, sir," the sergeant said, "I have the most amazing cover of Baby Got Back, and I'm sure that the Grand Ambassador would appreciate." End of story. How to be a diplomat without being a diplomat. What a brave soldier. It has served us well. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Humans Are Sneaky Bastards, written by Firefighter Raven. Pragran looked over his datapad while he waited by the holographic communication sphere to be ready to give his report to the Thrazan High Command. He once again inspected his uniform to make sure that he was within regulations. As the communication sphere flickered to life, he snapped to attention and saluted the Supreme Commander, the 5 Grand Admirals, and the 5 Grand Strategos, and the 5 and the 5 grand strategos of the army seated around the table. Inquisitor Impregrin, Senior Intelligence Officer, Rannick Section. Inquisitor Ipragan. Inquisitor Ipragan, Senior Intelligence Officer, Rannick Sector Command, reporting as ordered, doing his best not to show how nervous he was presenting a report before the High Command of the Thrazan Empire. "Be seated, Inquisitor," rumbled the voice of the Supreme Commander over the holographic sphere. Over the holographic sphere's audio device. "Yes, sir," Ipragan replied, taking a seat in front of the sphere. The Supreme Commander said, We call this meeting to discuss an intel report sent by you and flagged by high priority. We call this meeting to discuss an intel report sent by you and flagged high priority. There is some of the Council that doubt the veracity of this report. The same person talking. There are some on the Council that doubt the veracity of this report. Grand Admiral Yelpin spoke up. Do not take this as a slight in your abilities, Inquisitor Ipragran, but the High Command needs to clarify this report. We do not think it possible for humans to field the numbers that you reported. The Grand Admiral continued. If these numbers are accurate, then it will require shifting the Then it will require shifting a significant portion of the fleets and army units. Good afternoon, Annex. Hope you're doing well. The Supreme Commander spoke up again. The Supreme Commander spoke up again. We have also had reports of build-up in the Terric system, but much smaller than the one in your report. Explain how this intel was gathered and give an updated report of the human activity in the Samact system. I hear and obey, Supreme Commander, Ipragran replied. For the past 3 parlaks, we'd begun to pick up a decrease in the usual communications and ship traffic into systems. We ran diagnostics on our equipment and found no issues. Ipragran began. It might not sound like much, but the source of the missing signals caught our attention. Ipragran paused to bring up an image in the holosphere before continuing. This is a graph showing the sources of the signals we monitor. If you look at the last source, it's a radiation signature given off by the reactors on the civilian mining outpost. We use that signature as a baseline for the radiation output and natural signals given off by the system star and orbiting bodies, Ipragran explained. If we seem to get a spike that indicates increased activities by the humans, we can check against the baseline to see if the signals are just being magnified by stellar or background activity. Ipragran pointed to the time frame that coincided with 3 parlaks ago. The radiation signatures spike and then begin to fade until they are gone. Checking against the other part of the baseline showed no stellar activity to cause that. Grand Strategos Tickless asked, Couldn't they have just shut down the reactors or had an accident? Ipragran brought up another image. Humans' energy sources are far inferior to our own and give off more signatures than our own. This graph shows the shutdown of reactors in the Icalarian system just prior to our invasion. They were trying to evacuate all of their assets before we arrived. As I said, their energy sources are inferior to ours and take 5 times the amount of time to shut down. Ipragran brought up another graph. This shows the signature of a reactor we destroyed when we invaded the Niag system. There was a massive burst of radiation at the moment of destruction. Neither of those shows up in our monitoring of the Semact system. Ipragran points to the spike of radiation signatures. These match previous readings of new reactors being brought online. Either the humans made a massive technological jump to improve their reactors, or they were Well, I'm glad, Joseph. I'm glad. Hi, Mom. Joseph's mom. Hello. How you doing? I'm doing as well as can be, Alex. I'm doing as well as can be. Reactors. Or they were masking the signal somehow. It was only for a few rotations before we noticed some of our intelligence assets, both living beings and electronics, started going dark. This was enough to pique our curiosity, and we sent some of our cloaked reconnaissance probes to the system. We thought it was lost because we weren't getting any signals back, and sent another one. So we sent a third, but it gave orders to return after one rotation of the planet the humans occupied. After the probe left the system, we started getting information back. The other two probes were still active, but unable to transmit out of the system. Humans have found a way to block all artificial signals from leaving the system. Even our communications between our probes were restricted inside the system. That also explains our assets going dark. But we didn't know why they did this. So we sent the probe back to get close enough to change the orders of the other two probes to leave the system at preset times and transmit their data. Pragrin changed the image to one of the smacked systems, and the probe locations were marked. We snuck one of the probes close enough to begin receiving information from our assets on the station. The next intel dump is when we received reports of the increased human activity and new construction on several habitable moons. It also provided the initial intel on the gathering fleet. At first, it was only a dozen warships, 3 capitals, and their support ships, but dozens were arriving over each parlak. One of my remaining assets on the station also reported large numbers of ground forces arriving and then being flown to one of the new bases. So far, it has counted the insignia of no less than 8 divisions. To use the human term, so far it has counted the insignia of no less than 8 divisions, to use the human term. Previous intelligence reports have listed a human division to be 25,000 soldiers. Pragrin switched to a new screen. We received another probe signal before this meeting with updated information. We estimate the human fleet to be over 1,500 warships and several hundred other types of ships, mostly troop transports. Over 500 are capital ships. Pragrin checked his pad again before continuing. We've counted 5 supercarriers, 100 standard carriers, 200 battleship class, and 200 of their heavy cruisers. The rest of the fleet is a mix of sub-capitals that the humans classify as light cruisers, frigates, destroyers, and corvettes. Our current estimate has 1 supercarrier containing 500 strike craft, and carriers carry up to 150. The best estimates is 17,500 strike aircraft, but we do not know how many are for space combat, and if any are assigned for planetary support of ground forces. The asset also updated human ground force numbers. 3 more divisions have arrived. 1 artillery, 1 of armored vehicles, and 1 mech. We do not know their actual strength. Current total number of ground forces is at least 200,000 troops. The members of the High Council looked alarmed. The Supreme Commander asked, "Do you have any idea of their target?" We picked up an increased reconnaissance activity in the Boulogne system, Pragrin replied. He continued, "Our assets also picked up bits and pieces of information to support that system." "Boulogne system? That makes no sense. It has no strategic value." Boulogne system, that makes no sense. It has no strategic value, one of the ground strategos explained. One of the Grand Strategos exclaimed. He was a recent addition to the High Council, and Pragrin had forgotten his name. Before Pragrin could reply, Grand Admiral Pullen answered, "Not by itself, but it makes a good stepping-off point to other systems that would make effective staging grounds to then hit 7 significant worlds, both military and industrial." At this revelation, most of the members of the High Command looked either concerned or alarmed. "And what about the Derrick system build-up?" the Supreme Commander asked. After consulting with the intel staff monitoring the Terric system, we believe it's a distraction to keep our forces in that area. Discussion with my superiors came to the same result. Discussions with my superiors came to the same result, Hypergrin replied. No, that's wrong voice. And why does the intelligence come to this conclusion? Grand Admiral Apollon asked. Hypergrin changed the image in the globe to show scans of the Terric system. The naval and army forces are much smaller, maybe 150 ships of all types near the fourth planet starbase. That includes troop transports. Hypergrin continued. Their attempts at preventing our reconnaissance of the system is not as good as it's been in the past. We think they want us to see them. They are dangling a force of dangerous enough to take the Jakran system, but not against the forces we have in the system and our fleets. They are dangling a force dangerous enough to take the Jakant. They are dangling a force dangerous enough to take the Jakrant system, but not against the forces we have in the system and our fleets and armies in the area. But the human force building up in the Semact system outnumbers our total force in that sector 4 times over. Hypergrin finished. Hypergrin waited quietly as the High Command deliberated. Supreme Commander addressed Hypergrin. Normally, someone of your security level wouldn't be informed of these plans ahead of time, but we've determined this situation requires immediate updates on the intel. So you, and only you, will report directly to us, not through your superiors first. We are going to transfer the 1st, 3rd, and 5th fleets from the Jakrant system to the Lagranti system We are going to transfer the 1st, 3rd, and 8th fleets from the Jakrant system and the Lacarti systems to the Semact system. The 2 more fleets will come from a more secure sector on the Empire. The 5th and the 6th army groups in the Jakrant system will be relocated as well. Admiral Apollon spoke up. We'll be taking an indirect route to avoid detection. Besides monitoring the human buildup and notifying us when the offensive commences, you are here to also look for any signs of detection of these movements. The next few rotations were a busy time for Hypergrin, updating the latest intel on the human buildup and ensuring the movement of the Tarzan Thrazan. Ensuring the movement of the Thrazan forces wasn't detected. After discussions with High Command about the human forces attacking the Jakrant system, it was determined to be part of their misdirection ploy. Therefore, no reinforcements were sent there. Even after the Jakrant system fell, even the destruction of the 5th Fleet along with the army guarding it, the High Command still waited and fortified the Semact system. And then one rotation, the forces in the Semact system just vanished. All the humans and assets were gone and the system was empty. It was also rigged to explode after Thrazan forces entered the station. 2 ships and 383 ground troops were killed. All other human structures exploded right after that. The High Command assumed that the humans discovered the forces waiting for them and withdrew entirely to avoid the Thrazan forces' counterattack. Hypergrin was promoted for his actions during that period. They congratulated him for helping prevent the human offensive from succeeding with his work. It was 3 revolutions that Thrazan Prime later that Hypergrin was captured by the humans when the Renex sector fell. As a high-value prisoner, he was taken to the human homeworld for imprisonment and frequent interrogation. He assumed humans used tactics to interrogate as brutal as Thrazan interrogators did. After minimal resistance, he began freely answering their questions. It was after they had gone over all his communications with Thrazan High Command over his career that he decided to risk asking the question that had bothered him since the humans abandoned the Semact system. May I ask a question, Colonel Adams? Hypergrin requested. You may, the Colonel replied. Thank you, 4 of what you call years ago, your invasion forces in the Sumac system just disappeared within a matter of days.
The colonel replied, "Yes, I remember that."
Where did they go? We never saw some of the divisions our spy reported in action after that. And we didn't come across a build-up in space areas that matched the number of ships, Hyperagron asked.
The colonel looked at his comrade. "Not like he's going to escape and tell his buddies, right?"
The lieutenant colonel replied, "No. I think it's safe to tell him, and we've been dying to brag about it to people outside the know."
The colonel returned his attention to Hyperagron. With a grin, Colonel Adams began, "They never existed, or at least most of them."
Hyperagron was confused and asked, "What do you mean?" The lieutenant colonel spoke up. "We took a page from the major conflict on Earth before we ever put a human in space," he continued. "They used deception to pin down enemy forces at the wrong location and keep from defending against the true invasion force. They even thought that the true invasion was a feint, just like you did."
Hyperagron was horrified.
"But I saw the images of all the ships myself, and my assets saw the unit patches."
Colonel Adams laughed again before speaking.
"The ships were either empty hulls with only some having engines, so you'd see them arrive. Others were disguised. The ships were
The ships were either empty hulls with only some having engines, so you would see them arrive. Others were disguised civilian ships that also brought in disassembled parts to build more fake warships."
"And the troops?" Hyperagron asked. The lieutenant colonel replied, "Oh, that's only a couple of companies of non-combat personnel. We knew about your spy, and Yakiri always have been horrible at telling humans they don't know apart." We knew about your spy, and the Yakiri have always been horrible at telling humans they don't know apart. It was just the same 300 troops changing uniforms or division patches and boarding the station again. The actual unit never had any patches or identifying marks. We were just designated the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops after the original unit that handled the deception."
"Wake."
"I was fooled by you," Hyperagron replied. "My entire career was built on a lie, and I never figured it out."
Colonel Adams replied, "It's probably you didn't. Oh, they. Oh." Colonel Adams replied, "It's probably better that you didn't, or they might have imprisoned you."
Looking miserable, Hyperagron replied, "I would have probably been executed." With that realization, he's suddenly very glad. With that revelation, he was suddenly very glad that he never found out, and that he was a prisoner of the humans if High Command ever did find out. Looking at the two humans, "You humans are sneaking bastards," Hyperagron accused. At the same time, they both said, "Thank you," as if it was a compliment. End of story.
All right, speed run today. Woohoo!
What's that? An hour and a half. Okay, it's not a full day's work, but it is enough to keep us going until tomorrow.
Stretch.
What is today? Tuesday. Okay. Alrighty, I'm gonna call it a day. Like I said, we're heading off quite early to go check a property out, so need to go shower and be professional and stuff. So, yay. I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully we can get a full stream in, but like I said, this whole week, even some of next week, still gonna be viewing properties. Thank you all for spending your time with me. It's very much appreciated, especially in this time when everyone's attention is pulled which way and is really treated as a currency. So I am glad that I could spend time with you and you could spend time here. Another late story. I'm not sure what you mean, Alex. Oh, you mean on the main channel? I don't know. That's an entirely additional video, so instead of doing 4 videos a day, I would be doing 5 videos a day. But there is the series channel, which has all the series on it now, so there's always a... what's that? Nature of Predators at the moment at night. Unfortunately, I can't keep up the pace of 5 videos a day for too long. I could do it for long enough for Billy Bob. But that's about it. Right now, we just need to build up a backlog so that we've got... I want to try get a month ahead again. Just in time to get sick, so we'll see that. And then if we've got extra time after we're caught up to a month, then maybe I'll do another late series on the main channel. But time will tell for that one. Okie dokie.